The clock stopped at 3:17, not broken, just frozen. Like everything else in the Morales mansion, Adrian stood in the center of the living room, staring at the second hand. It trembled sometimes, as if trying to move forward, but it never did. 2 years, 730 days. The exact moment Laura's heart gave its last beat. The house was a museum now. White marble floors reflected nothing but emptiness. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen tears. Every surface gleamed with the kind of perfection that only comes from never being touched. He was 40 years old, a millionaire, a widower, and completely alone. If this story has already touched your heart in the first minute, subscribe to the channel. Here you'll find stories that heal, inspire, and make you believe in human goodness again. Adrian walked through rooms that echoed with silence. His footsteps were the only sound. No music, no laughter, no warmth. Just the ghost of a life that once filled these halls. His assistant, Margaret, appeared in the doorway. She was 63, gray-haired, patient. She'd watched him die inside when Laura did. "Mr. Morales," she said softly. "The final interview for the Aurora project. It's scheduled for 3 o'clock. He didn't turn around. "Cancel it." "Sir, you've canceled 11 already. This is the last candidate. If you don't hire someone, the project will be shut down. The board won't wait any longer." The Aurora project. A bridge. The last thing Laura designed before the tumor took her mind, then her body. She'd sketched it on hospital napkins, whispering about light and hope and structures that hold broken things together. He'd promised to build it, but promises felt like lies now. "Fine," he said, his voice hollow. "1 interview, then it's done." Margaret nodded and disappeared. Adrian walked to the window. Outside, the garden was perfect. Too perfect. The roses Laura planted were gone. He'd had them removed. Too much color, too much life. Now there were only hedges, trimmed into geometric silence. He pressed his palm against the glass. Cold. Everything was cold. He checked his watch. 2:47. 30 minutes until he could close this chapter forever. He didn't know that in 30 minutes, the impossible would walk through his door. He didn't know the heart he once loved was about to come home. At 2:58, the doorbell rang. Margaret answered it. A young woman stood on the threshold holding a leather portfolio against her chest. She was 27, with dark hair pulled into a neat bun. Her clothes were simple. Gray blazer, white blouse, black slacks. Professional, humble. Her eyes were nervous but kind. "Clara Mendez," she said, extending her hand. "I'm here for the interview." Margaret smiled. "Come in." Clara stepped inside. The house swallowed her. She felt it immediately, the silence. It wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating, like walking into a tomb. She followed Margaret through hallways lined with empty frames. Paintings had been removed. Only the outlines remained, ghosts on the walls. They entered a study. Adrian sat behind a massive oak desk, facing away from the door. He was looking at a photograph, but he turned it face down when they entered. "Mr. Morales," Margaret said, "this is Clara Mendez." He stood slowly, tall, broad shoulders, dark eyes that held nothing but exhaustion. His face was handsome in the way ruins are beautiful, shaped by something that used to be whole. "Ms. Mendez." His voice was flat. "Sit." Clara sat. Margaret left. The door closed. Silence stretched between them like a canyon. Adrian opened her file without looking at her. He skimmed the pages with disinterest. "Civil engineer. Top of your class. 3 years of experience. Letters of recommendation from—" He stopped, looked up. "Why do you want this job?" Clara swallowed. "Because I believe in what the Aurora project represents." "And what does it represent?" She hesitated, then spoke carefully. "A bridge isn't just steel and concrete. It's connection. It's a promise that 2 sides that seem too far apart can still meet." Adrian's pen stopped moving. She continued, unaware of the shift in his breathing. The beauty of a structure isn't in the steel, but in what it holds. The room went silent. Not quiet. Silent. Like the air had been sucked out. Adrian's hand tightened around the pen. His jaw clenched. His eyes, those exhausted, empty eyes, flared with something close to pain. Clara noticed. "I'm sorry, did I—" "Where did you hear that?" His voice was sharp now, almost angry. "Hear what?" "That phrase." Clara blinked, confused. I don't know. I've always believed it. It just feels true." He stared at her, not at her resume, at her. Really looked. The way she tilted her head. The way her hand rested over her chest when she spoke about things that mattered. Laura used to do that. The clock on the wall, silent for 2 years, suddenly ticked. Once. Adrian's head snapped toward it. Clara heard it too. She glanced at the clock, then back at him. "Mr. Morales?" He stood abruptly, shoving the file into a drawer. "The interview is over. But you'll hear from us." His tone was final, cold, dismissive. Clara stood, bewildered. "Did I say something wrong?" He didn't answer. She gathered her things and walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned back. "Thank you for your time." He didn't look at her. The door closed. Adrian stood frozen in the center of the room. The clock ticked again and again. 3:17, the exact hour Laura died. He stumbled back, gripping the edge of the desk. "What the hell?" he whispered. Margaret appeared moments later. "Sir, are you all right?" "Find out everything about her." "About Clara Mendez?" "Everything." His voice shook. "Where she's from, where she worked, her medical history. Everything." Margaret's face softened with concern. "Sir, what happened?" Adrian looked at the clock. It was still ticking, for the first time in 2 years. "I don't know," he whispered. But deep in his chest, where his heart still beat, where grief had made a home, something stirred. Something impossible. How could she possibly know that phrase? 3 days later, Clara received the call. She was hired. She stood in her small apartment, phone pressed to her ear, barely breathing. "Miss Mendez?" Margaret's voice was warm. "Can you start Monday?" Yes, of course, thank you." She hung up, then sat down on her couch and cried. Not sad tears, relief, gratitude, hope. She'd been struggling for months. Her previous firm had closed. Rent was late, bills piled up. And the medical debt, God, the medical debt, from the transplant 2 years ago still haunted her like a shadow. But this job, this project, it felt like a second chance. She pressed her hand to her chest, felt the steady rhythm beneath her ribs. "Thank you," she whispered to no one. Or maybe to someone. The heart that beat inside her wasn't hers, not originally. But it had given her life. And now maybe it had given her purpose. Monday morning, Clara arrived at the Morales estate at 8 a.m. Sharp. Margaret greeted her warmly and showed her to a small office on the 2nd floor. It overlooked the garden, the lifeless, geometric garden, but the light was good. "Mr. Morales won't be in today," Margaret said, "but he's left instructions. You'll be working with the engineering team remotely for now." Clara nodded, trying to hide her relief. The interview had unsettled her. The way he'd looked at her. The way he'd reacted to her words, like she'd said something forbidden. She unpacked her laptop and got to work. But Adrian was there. He stood in the hallway outside her office, hidden from view, watching through the crack in the door. He'd been there since she arrived. He watched the way she moved, the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the way she touched her chest absent-mindedly when she concentrated. Laura used to do that, every single gesture. It was impossible, and it was destroying him. By the end of the week, Clara had proven herself. She was brilliant, detail-oriented, kind to the staff. She brought donuts on Wednesday. She asked Margaret about her grandchildren. She worked late without complaint, and Adrian watched. He couldn't stop. He told himself it was professional, observing a new hire. But it wasn't. It was something else, something terrifying. On Friday, Clara was reviewing blueprints when she felt it. A presence. She looked up. Adrian stood in the doorway. She straightened. "Mr. Morales, I didn't hear you come in." He didn't move, just stood there, staring. "How are you finding the work?" he asked. "It's incredible. The design it's beautiful. Whoever conceptualized this understood more than engineering. They understood emotion." His jaw tightened. "My late wife designed it." Clara's breath caught. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know." "Why would you?" Silence. Then Clara did something unexpected. She stood and walked toward him, holding the blueprint. "Mr. Morales, if I may..." "There's a section here," she pointed. "The central arch. It's stunning, but the load distribution, if we adjust the supports here, it'll last longer, decades longer." He looked at the blueprint, then at her. "You want to change her design?" "No," Clara said quickly. "I want to protect it, so it lasts forever." Something shifted in his expression. He took the blueprint from her hands. Their fingers brushed. She gasped softly. A shock. Not electric, something deeper. She pulled her hand back, pressing it to her chest. "Sorry," she whispered. "I don't know why I..." But Adrian wasn't listening. He was staring at her hand, the one pressed over her heart. Laura used to do that when she felt something profound, exactly like that. "Are you all right?" Clara asked. He stepped back. "I'm fine." But he wasn't. He left the office without another word. That night, Adrian sat in his study staring at a file. Clara Mendez, age 27, born in Seattle, parents deceased. No siblings. And then, buried in the medical records Margaret had quietly obtained. Heart transplant recipient, February 14th, 2 years ago. The same day Laura died. Adrian's hands trembled. He stood, pacing the room like a caged animal. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be. But the dates matched. The hospital matched. He picked up the phone, dialed a number he hadn't called in months. "Dr. Rios," a voice answered. "Samuel, it's Adrian Morales." A pause. "Adrian, it's been a while. I need to know something." His voice was tight, controlled. "Laura's heart, the transplant, who received it?" Silence on the other end. "You know I can't tell you that." "Samuel, it's illegal, confidential. I could lose my license." "Please." Another pause. Then quietly, "Why are you asking?" Adrian closed his eyes. "Because I think she's working for me." The line went dead silent. Then Dr. Rios whispered, "Dear God." Something impossible had just happened. Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her hand pressed over her chest. The heartbeat was steady, strong, the same rhythm it had been for 2 years. But tonight, it felt different, restless. She closed her eyes and tried to breathe deeply, the way her therapist taught her after the transplant. In through the nose, out through the mouth, count to 4. But instead of calm, something else came. An image. A white house with blue shutters. A piano in the corner. Sunlight through lace curtains. The scent of jasmine so strong it made her chest ache. Her eyes snapped open. She'd never been in that house, but she could smell the jasmine. The dream started that week. Every night, the same images. A woman's hands on piano keys, long fingers, a silver wedding ring, playing something soft and melancholy, a man's voice, low and tender. "You don't have to be perfect, Laura. You just have to be here." A garden full of roses, red ones, the petals falling like snow. And always, always, the feeling of being loved so deeply, it hurt. Clara woke up crying. She didn't know why. At work, she tried to focus, but her body was betraying her. Whenever Adrian walked into the room, her heart raced. Not attraction. Something else. Something she couldn't name. Recognition. One afternoon, she was in the hallway reviewing contractor notes when Adrian passed by. She didn't see him, but her heart did. It sped up so fast she gasped, clutching the wall. Adrian stopped, turned. "Are you all right?" She nodded quickly, embarrassed. "I'm fine, just stood up too fast." He didn't look convinced. He stepped closer. "Do you need to sit down?" "No, But then he was right in front of her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, cedar, and smoke. Her heart pounded harder, not fear, longing. Her eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. "I'm sorry," she whispered, wiping her face. "I don't know what's wrong with me." Adrian stared at her, at the tears, at the way her hand pressed over her chest, at the way she looked at him, like she knew him even though she didn't. "You should go home," he said quietly. "I'm fine. Go home, Clara." She nodded and left, humiliated. That night, she called her cardiologist. Dr. Patel answered on the third ring. "Clara, is everything okay?" "I don't know." Her voice shook. "I've been having dreams and feelings, things that don't make sense." "What kind of feelings?" "Like memories, but they're not mine." Dr. Patel was quiet for a moment. "Have you heard of cellular memory?" "No. It's a theory. Some transplant recipients report memories, preferences, even emotions that seem to come from their donors. It's not scientifically proven, but it's documented." Clara's throat tightened. "You're saying the heart remembers?" "I'm saying the heart is more than a pump. We don't fully understand it." Clara sat down, her legs weak. "Who was my donor?" "You know I can't tell you that. Please." "Clara, I need to know." Dr. Patel sighed. "All I can tell you is that she was a woman, 40 years old. She died of a brain aneurysm." Clara closed her eyes. A woman, someone who lived, loved, lost. And now her heart beat in Clara's chest. "Thank you," Clara whispered. She hung up, then sat in the dark, listening to the heartbeat that wasn't hers, and wondered whose life she was living. At the Morales estate, Adrian stood in Laura's old studio. He hadn't been in here since she died. The room was untouched. Dust covered the drafting table, sketches still pinned to the walls. Her favorite mug, stained with old coffee, sat beside a dried-out pen. He walked to the desk and opened a drawer. Inside, a journal, Laura's handwriting, looping and elegant. He flipped to the last entry. February 13th, the day before she died. "I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of being forgotten. I want to leave something behind, something that holds people together. A bridge, a promise, a heartbeat. Adrian will be lost without me. I know that. But maybe someone will find him. Maybe the pieces of me that survive will help him remember how to live. I hope whoever receives my heart knows they're loved, even if they never know my name." Adrian's hands shook. He closed the journal, pressed it to his chest, and for the first time in 2 years, he let himself cry. Not silent tears, sobs, deep, wrenching sobs that tore through him like a storm, because he knew now. Clara wasn't just an engineer. She was walking proof that Laura was still here, still beating, still fighting to hold him together. Was the heart remembering or reaching out? Dr. Samuel Rios arrived at the Morales estate on a Tuesday morning. He didn't call ahead. Margaret answered the door, surprised. "Dr. Rios, we weren't expecting you. I need to speak with Adrian. It's urgent." She led him to the study. Adrian was at his desk reviewing contracts. When he saw Samuel, he stood immediately. "What's wrong?" Samuel closed the door behind him. "I shouldn't be here, but I need to tell you something." Adrian's jaw tightened. "About Clara." Samuel nodded. "I've been losing sleep over this. You asked me about Laura's heart. I didn't confirm it then, but I can't let you go on like this without knowing the truth." "So it's true." "Yes." Samuel's voice was heavy. "Clara Mendez received Laura's heart. Same hospital. Same day. I assisted in the transplant. Adrian sank into his chair. Even though he'd suspected, hearing it confirmed felt like being hit all over again. Why didn't you tell me before? Because it's illegal. Because donor families aren't supposed to know recipients. Because I thought you'd be better off not knowing. Better off? Adrian's voice rose. I've been going insane, Samuel. Watching her. Feeling like I'm seeing a ghost. I know. And I'm sorry, but Adrian... Samuel leaned forward. You need to be careful. Clara doesn't know. If she finds out, it could destroy her. Destroy her? Transplant recipients go through psychological hell, survivor's guilt, identity crisis. If she finds out she's carrying the heart of her employer's dead wife, it could break her. Adrian stood, pacing. Then what do I do? Pretend I don't know? Pretend I don't see Laura in every move she makes? Yes. If you care about her at all, you let her live her life. Adrian stopped, stared out the window. In the garden below, Clara was walking with Margaret, laughing at something. Sunlight caught her hair. For a moment, just a moment, she looked exactly like Laura. I can't do this, Adrian whispered. You have to. But the secret was already unraveling. That afternoon, Clara was in the hallway when she heard voices from Adrian's study. She wasn't eavesdropping, not intentionally, but the door was cracked, and she heard her name. Clara doesn't need to know, Dr. Rios was saying. It'll only hurt her. She has a right to know whose heart she's carrying, Adrian replied, his voice strained. Clara froze. Whose heart she's carrying. Her hand flew to her chest. It's not just about rights, Adrian. It's about mercy. Let her live without that weight. And what about me? I have to see my wife's heart beating in someone else's chest and pretend it doesn't kill me every day? Clara's vision blurred. She stepped back, turned, ran. She made it to the bathroom before the sobs came. She locked the door and collapsed against it, gasping for air. Laura's heart. His wife's heart. She pressed both hands over her chest, feeling the steady thump beneath her ribs. This heart had loved him. This heart had broken when it lost him, and now it was hers. She felt sick, not physically, emotionally, like she'd stolen something sacred. Oh, God, she whispered. Oh, God, oh, God. The door rattled. Clara? Margaret's voice, gentle, concerned. Are you all right? Clara wiped her face, opened the door. Margaret took one look at her and understood. You heard. Clara nodded, tears streaming. Margaret pulled her into a hug. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. Clara went home early. She sat on her couch, staring at nothing. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. We need to talk. She didn't respond. She couldn't. Because now everything made sense. The dreams. The memories, the way her heart raced when he was near. It wasn't her. It was Laura, still loving him, still reaching for him, through her. Clara now knew the truth, but he didn't know she knew. Clara didn't go to work for 3 days. She called in sick. Margaret covered for her, but Adrian knew. He knew she'd heard. On the 4th day, he showed up at her apartment. He knocked, waited. No answer. Clara, I know you're in there. Silence. Please, we need to talk about this. The door opened. Clara stood there, eyes red, arms crossed over her chest like armor. What do you want? To explain. Explain what? That I'm walking around with your dead wife's heart? That every time I feel something, I don't know if it's me or her? Her voice cracked. That I'm not even sure I'm real anymore? Adrian's face crumpled. Clara, no. She stepped back. You don't get to do this. You don't get to look at me like I'm her. I'm not her. I'm just the person who got to live because she didn't. That's not true. Isn't it? Tears spilled over. You hired me because of this, didn't you? Because you couldn't let her go. I hired you because you're brilliant. Liar. The word hung in the air like smoke. Adrian's jaw clenched. You want the truth? Fine. Yes. When I realized whose heart you had, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I wanted to fire you, forget you existed, pretend none of this was real. But I didn't. Because you earned this job. Because you're talented and kind and you care about the work. Not because of Laura. Because of you. Clara shook her head. I can't do this. Can't do what? Be here. Work for you. Carry this. She pressed her hand to her chest. Carry her and pretend it doesn't matter. It does matter. Adrian's voice rose. He stepped closer. It matters because she saved your life. It matters because you're standing here, breathing, living, creating. Because she gave you that chance. And yes, it kills me. Every single day, it kills me to see her in you. But it also... His voice broke. It also gives me hope. Clara stared at him, trembling. Hope for what? That love doesn't die. That the best parts of her are still here. That maybe, just maybe, I didn't lose everything. Silence. Then Clara whispered, You're punishing me for something I didn't choose. Adrian's face shattered. I know, and I hate myself for it. She took a shaky breath. I dream about her, you know. I see her hands, her garden. I hear her voice. She tells me... Clara's voice wavered. She tells me to take care of you. Adrian went completely still. What? In my dreams. She says, take care of him. He forgets how to live without me. A sob tore out of Adrian's throat. He covered his face with his hands. Clara stepped forward, hesitant. Then, slowly, she reached out and placed her hand over his. I didn't ask for this, she whispered. But maybe she did. Maybe this is what she wanted. Adrian looked up, eyes red and raw. She wanted you to live, not to carry her memory like a curse. Then maybe you never lost her, Clara said softly. Maybe she just moved. The words hit him like lightning. He stared at her. This woman who wasn't Laura, but carried her heart. And for the first time in 2 years, he let himself feel it. Not grief, gratitude. Can I? His voice was barely audible. Can I hear it? Clara understood immediately. She took his hand and placed it over her chest. Over the heartbeat. Thump, 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 thump. Laura's rhythm. Adrian closed his eyes and broke. He wept against her, his hand still pressed over the heart that used to be his wife's. Clara held him, not as Laura, as herself. 2 broken people, 1 impossible second chance. When the tears finally stopped, Adrian pulled back. I'm sorry, he whispered. For what? For making you carry this alone. Clara shook her head. I was never alone. She's been with me the whole time. He looked at her, really looked and saw it now. Not Laura's ghost, Clara's light. Will you come back? He asked quietly. To the project? She hesitated. I don't know if I can. Then don't come back for me. Come back for her. Finish what she started. Clara's breath caught, because he was right. This wasn't just a job. It was a promise. Laura's last gift to the world. And Clara was the only one who could deliver it. Okay, she whispered. I'll come back. The next morning, Clara found an envelope on her desk. Inside, the signed blueprints for the Aurora Bridge and a handwritten note. For the heart that found its way home. A.M. She pressed it to her chest and felt the heart beat stronger, not in sorrow, in purpose. Has he disappeared forever or begun to heal? 6 months later, the Aurora Bridge stood complete. It arched over the river like a promise made real, steel and light and hope woven together. The opening ceremony was scheduled for a Saturday morning in May. The sky was clear. The water below shimmered gold. Hundreds of people gathered, reporters, city officials, families, children. And in the center of it all, Clara Mendez stood at the podium. She wore a simple white dress. Her hair was down. Around her neck, a silver necklace, new but meaningful. She looked out at the crowd, took a breath, and began. 2 years ago, I was given a second chance at life. I didn't know why. I didn't know who. I only knew that someone, somewhere, had chosen to give when they had nothing left to lose. Her voice was steady, strong. Today, we dedicate this bridge to Laura Morales, a woman I never met, a woman whose heart now beats in my chest. The crowd went silent. Clara's hand moved to her chest. Laura believed that structures aren't just about steel and stone. They're about connection, about holding things together when everything feels like it's falling apart. She looked down at the notes in her hand, then set them aside. I used to think I was living her life, that I was just a vessel for someone else's dreams. But I was wrong. She didn't give me her life. She gave me the chance to build my own. And in doing so, she taught me the most important thing I'll ever know. She paused. Love doesn't die. It transforms. It moves. It finds new ways to breathe. In the crowd, Adrian stood quietly. He wore a dark suit, no tie. His hands were in his pockets. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was present. Clara found his eyes. So this bridge isn't a memorial. It's a beginning. For everyone who's ever lost someone. For everyone who's ever wondered if the pieces can be put back together. She smiled, tears glistening. They can, not the same way, but maybe better. The crowd erupted in applause. After the speeches, after the ribbon was cut, after the first cars drove across the Aurora Bridge, Clara stood alone at the center. The sun was beginning to set. Golden light poured across the river. She leaned against the railing, looking down at the water. Footsteps approached. She didn't turn. She already knew who it was. Adrian stood beside her, quiet. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I found this in Laura's things," he said softly. "She wore it every day. I thought—" He opened the box. Inside, a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant, a tiny bridge. "I thought you should have it." Clara's breath hitched. "I can't take this." "Yes, you can!" He lifted the necklace. "She would have wanted you to." Clara turned, tears in her eyes. Adrian stepped closer. Gently, he clasped the necklace around her neck. His fingers brushed her skin. She shivered, not from cold, from connection. "Thank you," she whispered, "for letting me be part of this." "Thank you," he replied, "for giving her a reason to keep beating." They stood there side by side as the sun dipped below the horizon. And then, a flutter of white. A butterfly landed on the railing beside Clara's hand. Delicate, fragile, beautiful. Clara stared at it. Laura loved butterflies, Adrian said quietly. There was one at her funeral. White, just like this. The butterfly opened and closed its wings slowly, then took flight. It circled them once, twice, and disappeared into the golden light. Clara's heart beat faster, not in fear, in peace. She looked at Adrian. He looked at her, and for the first time, he didn't see Laura. He saw Clara, a woman who carried a gift, not a ghost. "Maybe it's time," Clara said softly, "to let her rest." Adrian nodded. "Yeah, maybe it is." They turned and walked back toward the crowd together, not holding hands, but side by side. Two people learning to live again. The heart beats faster as the butterfly takes flight. 3 years later, the Aurora Foundation had grown into something extraordinary. A nonprofit dedicated to helping children awaiting organ transplants. Scholarships, medical support, hope. Clara ran it. Adrian funded it. Together they built something that mattered. On a warm afternoon in June, they stood on the Aurora Bridge once more. Children ran across it, laughing. Families took photos. The city had embraced it as a symbol, not of loss, but of resilience. Clara leaned against the railing, watching a little girl chase a balloon. Adrian stood beside her, hands in his pockets. "She would have loved this," Clara said. "She does," Adrian replied. Clara smiled. "You think so?" "I know so. They stood in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that comes from understanding, from acceptance. "I've been thinking," Clara said, "about the future." "Yeah? About what comes next? For me, for us, for all of this." Adrian turned to her. "And?" She looked at him, really looked, at the man who had been broken, who had learned to heal, who had let her be herself. "I think," she said slowly, "that maybe Laura's greatest gift wasn't the heart she gave me. It was the chance she gave both of us, to learn how to love again." Adrian's breath caught. "Clara, I'm not her," she said firmly. "I'll never be her, but I carry part of her. And maybe that's enough." He stepped closer. "It's more than enough." The sun flared behind them, casting long shadows across the bridge. A voiceover whispered through the scene, soft, knowing, eternal. "Some hearts don't belong to the ones who carry them. They belong to the ones who awaken them. Love doesn't end. It transforms. It rebuilds. It breathes in places we never expect." Clara and Adrian stood together as the golden light washed over them. She reached for his hand. He took it, not as a replacement for what was lost, but as a promise of what could be. Below them, the river flowed endlessly forward. Above them, a white butterfly circled twice before disappearing into the sky. The heart in Clara's chest beat steady and strong. Thump, 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 thump. A rhythm that once belonged to Laura. A rhythm that now carried two stories, two lives, one impossible miracle. That evening, back at the foundation office, Clara sat at her desk reviewing applications. 23 children waiting for transplants this month alone. Each file a prayer, each name a hope. Adrian appeared in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you could use this?" She smiled. "You thought right." He set the cup down and glanced at the files. "Big month. Always is." She closed the folder gently. "But we'll get through it. We always do." He sat across from her. For a moment, he just watched her work. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear. The way she bit her lip when she concentrated. The way her hand occasionally drifted to her chest, a gesture she'd never lose. But now, he didn't see it as Laura's habit. He saw it as Clara's anchor, her way of remembering she was alive. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, catching him staring. "How different things are." "Different how?" 3 years ago, I thought my life was over. That I'd spend the rest of my days in that house, frozen at 317, waiting for something that would never come back. Clara's expression softened. "And now? Now I know that some things do come back. Just not in the way we expect." She set down her pen. "Adrian, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I'm just grateful. For you. For this. For the chance to feel something again." Clara stood and walked around the desk. She sat on the edge, facing him. "You know what's strange?" she said. "I used to be terrified that I'd never be enough. That I'd always be living in her shadow. That every time you looked at me, you'd only see what you lost. And now? Now I know that's not how love works. Real love doesn't compete with ghosts. It makes room for them." Adrian's eyes glistened. "She'd be proud of you. She'd be proud of us." The words hung in the air like a benediction. A blessing from the past to the present. Later that night, Clara stood alone in her apartment. She'd moved to a new place 6 months ago. Brighter, bigger windows, plants on the sill, white roses like the ones Laura used to grow. She stood in front of the mirror, wearing the silver necklace. The tiny bridge pendant caught the light. She touched it gently. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." The reflection staring back at her wasn't haunted anymore. It was whole. She pressed her hand to her chest, felt the heartbeat, strong, steady, hers now, but carrying memory, carrying love, carrying proof that the end of one story could be the beginning of another. Miles away, in the Morales mansion, Adrian stood in Laura's old studio. The room was different now. The dust was gone. The windows were open. Sunlight poured in. He'd started using it again, not to preserve her memory, but to honor it. On the drafting table sat new blueprints, a community center, a park, a playground for transplant survivors, all in Laura's name, but built by him and Clara, together. He looked at the photograph on the desk, Laura smiling in the garden, holding a white rose. "I'm okay now," he said quietly. "I didn't think I would be, but I am." He touched the frame. "Thank you for letting me go, for letting me live again." The wind blew through the open window, rustling the papers on the desk, and for just a moment, he swore he smelled jasmine. On the bridge, late at night, when the city slept, a soft glow illuminated the steel arches. The Aurora Bridge stood as a testament, not to death, but to life, to second chances, to the impossible ways love survives. Cars passed over it without knowing its story. People walked across it without knowing the hearts that built it. But that didn't matter, because the bridge knew, and it held them anyway. 5 years later, the Aurora Foundation hosted its annual gala. Clara stood on stage, older now, wiser, radiant. Beside her, Adrian. His hair had threads of silver. His face had softened. His eyes, once hollow, now shone with purpose. "Tonight," Clara said into the microphone, "we celebrate 50 successful transplants, 50 children who get to grow up, 50 families who get to hope again." The crowd erupted in applause. "But we also celebrate something else," Clara continued. "We celebrate the donors, the ones who said yes when it mattered most, the ones who turned tragedy into triumph." She paused, her hand moving instinctively to her chest. "I stand here tonight because someone made that choice, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure their gift wasn't wasted." Adrian took the microphone. "My wife, Laura, believed in connection, in building things that last, in holding people together when the world tries to pull them apart." He looked at Clara. "She would have loved what we've built, not just the bridge, not just the foundation, but the proof that love doesn't end. It evolves." The crowd rose to their feet. Applause thundered through the ballroom. Clara and Adrian stood side by side, hands clasped, as the room filled with light and sound and hope. Later, outside under the stars, Clara and Adrian walked through the garden. Real flowers now, roses, white and red, growing wild and beautiful. "Do you ever wonder," Clara asked, "what she'd say if she could see all this?" Adrian smiled. "I think she'd say, 'It took you long enough.'" Clara laughed. A real, full laugh, the kind that comes from joy, not obligation. They stopped at a bench beneath a willow tree, sat together. The night was quiet, peaceful. "I've been thinking," Adrian said, "about the future." "What about it?" "About legacy, about what we leave behind when we're gone." Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. "And what did you decide? That legacy isn't about monuments. It's about moments. About the people we touch, the lives we change, the love we give." Clara closed her eyes, felt the heartbeat in her chest. Laura's heart. Her heart. Their heart. "Then I'd say we're doing pretty well." Adrian pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Yeah," he whispered. "We are." Above them, a white butterfly landed on the branch of the willow tree. It stayed for just a moment, then flew away into the night. Clara watched it go and smiled, because she understood now. Some goodbyes aren't endings. They're transformations. And some hearts don't stop beating when they're given away. They just learn to beat in 2 places at once. Some hearts don't belong to the ones who carry them, but to the ones who awaken them. Laura gave Clara life. Clara gave Adrian hope. And together they proved that love is stronger than death. Because love doesn't end when the heart stops beating. It just finds a new way to breathe. And love found a new way to breathe. If this story touched your heart, leave your like and share it with someone who believes in second chances. Every day, here you'll find stories that leave marks.